Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome again to our showcase session. I hope everyone is safe and doing pretty well. In today's session, we are going to talk about test data. I hope you understand the need of test data, large number of test data, in order to accomplish your test objective for your applications or products that are under test. Be it manual testing or functional, even performance testing also needs large number of volume data in order to meet the testing objectives. For example, like in extreme conditions, we would like to test how the application is performing, let's say in zero data condition or in full volume data conditions, right? Is the performance intact? Is the application consistently meeting its requirements, and so on? So with that said, we have such a great commercial test data generating platform called Tonic in the showcase today. And without further ado, let's get started. We have Adam and Ryan from Tonic, who will take us through the product capabilities, and we'll also talk about their customers, what are the expectations, challenges, and also learn from them how to leverage such a commercial platform in creating the required number of data records as test data to support our automation or the overall testing process. Adam, thank you so much for taking time and joining today. Welcome to the show. And I'm so excited about having you and Ryan in this meeting, and also excited about the product that you are going to showcase, Tonic.ai. So before we start, Adam, review the technical aspects of Tonic. Would you like to quickly tell us about your responsibilities at Tonic.ai and a little bit about your history of the company? So that would be a good point to start, Adam.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to. And by the way, before we start, thank you so much for having us on the Test Automation Forum. We're really happy to be here and to talk more about test automation. So as you said, my name's Adam K. Moore, and I'm the head of engineering and also the co-founder of Tonic.ai. Tonic.ai, or just Tonic, is the fake data company. We generate fake or synthetic data for our customers, which they can use in really any way they see fit. But the typical use cases we see most often are for development and testing. So the most common scenario we see is development and test teams don't have access to the production database to do their job. So they typically have some very poor imitation of the production database that they use in their staging and development environments. This is going to be a database where, yeah, they copied the schema from production, and then they've had to go manually insert rows into production so that they can go through their test scenarios and develop new features. That might work when you're a very small company and you have 10, 20 tables. But once you become a company of any real size, your database typically grows a lot. I think for us, average, probably our customers will come to us with databases with hundreds of tables, and normally multiple databases. So it'll be thousands or tens of thousands of columns. As an interesting side note, actually, we just started working with a customer that has set the new record for us. Their database is 47,000 tables. So you're obviously not going to go in and manually handcraft data for databases of that size, right? So Tonic can come in and do it for you in an automated way. You take our tool. You can deploy it yourself, or we also have a hosted offering, and then it connects to your database using heuristics, machine learning, and also user input. We will take your production database and generate a sanitized version of it that looks and feels real. It really looks like production data, but all of the sensitive columns have been modified in a way where they look real, but they're not. So really, the result of Tonic, the database that you get to use for development and testing, looks and feels like production, but it's devoid of any sensitive data. And like I said, the use cases are primarily dev and test, but we also support use cases like generating data for sales demos or de-identifying data for machine learning purposes. Maybe you're trying to come up with some training data, for example. So let me give you a little bit of the history of the company, because I think you also asked about that. Tonic is 4 years old. Our employee base is in the United States, but we're actually 100% remote. We had only a small number of employees going into COVID back in March of 2020, and we really started, hitting our stride, really growing the company aggressively, starting around right when COVID started. So, we basically, me and my co-founders were already in different cities. And then COVID starts. So, well, we don't really care about hiring in the cities we live in because we won't see the people face to face anyways. So we just started hiring all over the country. At this point, I think we're approaching 80 employees. I don't know how many different states our employees live in, but I know our bulk is probably in California, where my co-founders are, in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live, and then in New York City, actually where Ryan lives. So I think Tonic is well represented today. Did that cover all the questions?
Absolutely. So just to summarize, Tonic will create some synthetic data, some kind of, it's not the real data, but it's looking like real data for testing purpose.
Inspired by the real data, certainly.
Right. So is it like going to only take the sample data from the database, from production database or some existing database, or we can also give some manual Excel spreadsheets to create that synthetic data?
You can do both, and it just depends on how you want to use Tonic. At the end of the day, Tonic's goal really is to give you an output database that resembles production as well as possible. So the plethora of combinations and breadth of data that exists in your production database, we want to make sure that is well represented in the output database that Tonic produces. Sometimes though, our customers also have we typically call it seed data. This is data that they want to add into the output database on top of what was de-identified from production. And Tonic can support that as well through a variety of mechanisms.
Okay, got it. And one more question. It's not a question, rather. I wanted to share my experiences with you.
Great.
Maybe 10, 15 years ago, when I actually, I was working as a test engineer, I was testing a handheld device application. And, it is basically designed for an application field engineer, where the application will have the local database. The data would be stored on engineer's handheld device. But right. nobody tested it for, how the application will behave when the database would be full, right? Completely consuming the entire memory, right?
Yes.
And something happened very kind of, interesting when a field engineer actually continued to use it for a longer duration without syncing it to the main server. The application actually crashed, and that led to a lot of loss of data. So yes. I wanted to kind of, highlight here how important is testing your applications with full, thousands, 10,000s or millions of records to see whether your application is still working. But
yeah, absolutely right. It's real common. I was talking about earlier how these customers come to us with they have their manually crafted databases they're using. Even if they can insert rows into the correct tables to get the application to boot, it's very rare to see these tables have the correct scale of data that's needed to test. The example you gave is a good one, but it's very extreme, the loss of data, right? That's somewhat unique, but of course it happens. I think more common now is you're using a database that just doesn't have enough data. So of course, all the SQL queries that the server is running to grab data to power the front end, right? They're all very fast. Everything works very performantly because the database is mostly empty. So being able to do that type of scale testing with de-identified data is very useful. And in Tonic, actually, we have Ryan is going to demonstrate a lot of this a little later, but we have a mode in the product called scaled mode, which will actually allow you to augment the number of rows in specific tables if you would like to see how certain queries perform as the number of rows increases over time. It's not appropriate for all use cases, but it can be useful for customers for specific things.
Absolutely. And it is not only the functionality or the functional testing part of the game, it is also useful in performance testing, right? To see how the application is behaving with, a lot of millions of records. Let's say, the application is getting a lot of users worldwide, right? Is the application still working, right? So performance aspect is also very important at this point of time. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure, Tonic can also generate data for performance testing as well.
Oh, absolutely. We really consider it one and the same use case. like you typically want to do your performance testing against a database that has the same scale as your production. So with Tonic, I mean, really, at the end of the day, our goal is to give you an output database that resembles the production database as closely as possible. We have customers that tell us that, you know, for example, like their dev team was using, like, you know, production data in very locked down environments to do testing. And overnight, these companies would switch it out with Tonic generated data, and no one would even know. That's how realistic and effective these output databases can be.
Very good. All right, sounds great. So is your application capable of generating localized data? For example, let's an application is designed, developed, and used only in India, right?
Sure.
So can we kind of, you know, train your platform to create Indianized data? Like, you know, my name is Tribikram, Srinivas, things like that. Can it generate that kind of data also?
So the answer is mostly yes. So, I mean, the bare minimum is Tonic needs to be able to support the various character encodings needed for different languages and locales. And of course we do that. In fact, we support whatever the encoding is of the underlying database. You know, default on most databases is UTF-8, which we support, of course. And then it comes down to, well, and you'll see this in a few minutes when we demo, but Tonic basically has a host of transformations that you can apply, and you basically apply individual transformations to individual columns. So depending on the types of transformations we're talking about, we do support different locales. So if you have a column, let's do a simple example. If you have a column of first names common in India, there are two ways we could generate new names in that column. The first, or a few rather. The first is using our name generator. Our name generator is US centric though at the moment. So I think that's mostly out the door.
Got it.
The next option is you can use what we call our custom categorical generator. You, the user, can provide Tonic with a list of custom values, and Tonic will at random sample from those values and replace them in the column. So if you have your own list of 100,000 first names, Tonic can replace the column with those values at random and preserve like the distribution of names that you provided to Tonic. The third option is that you just tell Tonic to shuffle the values in the column itself. In that situation, it'll whatever first names existed in the column to begin with, those first names will remain in the column and they'll maintain their frequency counts. So I'm not sure of what is a very common first name in India, may I ask?
Let's say Amit.
Wonderful. So if that name Amit appears in the database 10% of the time, then using this categorical generator, it'll remain at 10%, but its values will be shuffled around. So that's another way to preserve locale.
Got it. Okay, that sounds very interesting.
Yes.
All right. So before we go to Ryan, my last question to you, Adam, is since you guys are partnering with your customers globally, right? So
Yes.
from your perspective, what do you think the industry is leaning towards at this point of time?
And by industry, I think, do you mean specifically like the industry for synthetic data and data
Overall testing, test automation, data requirements for testing, and so on. If you can give us, your perspective, I think that would be very helpful to our followers.
I would love to give my perspective. I'm going to give it that my perspective is it's all colored by the space that I'm in, the specific space that Tonic focuses on. So it's going to be from that perspective. What we notice is that there are a variety of older tools on the market for test data management, data masking, data de-identification. These tools have typically, historically, they've been created by database vendors, and they work specifically with their databases. What we have seen is that as things are getting more complex in technology, right? It's so rare now for a company to use a single database vendor for everything, right? It might be that, okay, well, the application database is in Postgres, but we also store some data in Dynamo. We also have Parquet files sitting in S3, and our data warehouse is in Snowflake, right? It'll be like, 4, 5, 6 databases, whatever. Or it could be like each micro application has its own database. Sometimes it's Postgres, sometimes it's SQL Server, sometimes it's Mongo, etc. Right? So with this growing complexity, we found that the fact that Tonic can actually operate across, essentially what is every popular database system on the market today, and the fact that it can properly sync your de-identified data across those data sources. And what I mean by that is input that, like when Tonic takes an input value and de-identifies it, we will always ensure that the same input value gets de-identified to the same output value. And we do that across your database systems so that your de-identified output, your new staging environment has the proper linkages between data in these different database systems, right? And we call that consistency in the product, by the way. So we've seen this growing trend of more complexity, more database vendors being used in environments and in systems. And we built this set of features, or rather we built Tonic from the ground up around this thesis of ours that things are getting more complex and harder to test, and making this assumption of like single vendor database systems is really just not appropriate anymore. And that's why I think that assumption and that thesis that we had early on has really led to some great growth that we've had. And I think it's kind of proven our thesis to be true.
Got it. So that, the testing team can test their applications or products with diversified data from multiple sources and so on.
Absolutely. Like, and when you're testing now, it's like, yeah, sometimes you're testing your application against a single database, but there's typically many other things that are being thrown into the mix, and you need consistently de-identified data everywhere for the applications to work, so that you can execute your test flows.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with why it is so important to have those diversified test data for effectively, thoroughly testing your products for your customers. Absolutely. So Adam, thank you so much. That was a great insight, and I'm sure our followers would definitely take benefits out of it. So with that, I think we can go for a demo, and we have Ryan. Ryan, thank you so much. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on the Test Automation Forum. Really exciting opportunity. My name is Ryan Callahan. I'm one of the account executives over here at Tonic. So really customer facing, bring customers, introduce the product to them, help them understand, the use cases that Tonic is going to provide for them, the solutions that we'll provide. So I'm really excited to show a demo today.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Yeah.
Awesome. So great intro, a little bit more background about what Tonic's actually doing. So we're going to take an already existing data source, for example, a copy of your production database, and we're going to generate a new clone of that database that's devoid of any sensitive information or PII. And we're doing that by generating a new set of PII that looks and feels like the original database, but it's all fake. So we're going to preserve all the same statistical properties that you care about. It'll have all the same schema and structure, primary and foreign keys, unique constraints and indexes, and everything that the actual original production database has. So you don't have to spend any more time sourcing some kind of compliant data set. You can build products faster, do better testing, find those bugs quicker. Security and compliance are all baked in. So what you're seeing here is Tonic. And for the sake of this demo, we're running this on our own hosted cloud. For most Tonic customers, however, Tonic is on-premise. So your data is going to stay with you. We'll never access any of your systems, and everything works entirely inside of your own environment. For today's demo, I've already connected to a Postgres database sitting on RDS, and Tonic does act like we're structured like an ETL. So Tonic's going to connect to a source database and then to a destination database of the same type. This destination is where that clone of the production database is going to go. And that's what we connect to our applications or staging environment or development environment or whatever else we need to connect Tonic to. Now, once we have Tonic connected to the appropriate databases, the first thing that Tonic's going to do is run a surface level scan of the entire data set. This is an initial first pass where Tonic provides automatic recommendations of what needs to be de-identified and suggests it using what we call generators to mask that data. Now, a nice thing about Tonic is we can handle very large complex data sets and point out that sensitive information. And a good example here would be this email column. This might be where Tonic sees the column name that literally says email, or it's going to take a snippet of that column, see that these are formatted as email addresses, and then it's going to suggest that you can de-identify that email column using what we call an email generator. Now, moving on here, there's more to Tonic than just identifying that sensitive data. We can also see at a very high level all the sensitive data that lives within our environment. We can also make bulk edits or transformations to our data set. So I'm moving on to our database view. And what you're seeing here on the left is all the tables within our data. And on the right, we have all of our columns. Now, let's say there are certain tables that don't contain sensitive information. We can simply truncate or ignore those tables here. On the other hand, we can also filter down for what's sensitive within our data set, either because maybe Tonic's identified as sensitive, or maybe I've manually marked as sensitive, and I can filter for that. I can also see what we haven't yet protected. And now I have a nice clean to-do list of columns to de-identify before sending along to my engineering teams. As mentioned, we can also make bulk transformations to our data set. So let's say, for example, I want to transform all the first name columns within my data. I can simply search for them right here, and then apply a bulk generator for first name. And now we can see the types of transformations taking place within our data set. So Alexandra's becoming Chanel, John is Jules, and so on. Now, I also noticed that we have two Melissas here, one for Vicky and one for Yahara. And in certain instances, like first names, this is probably okay. However, there are scenarios where you need the same input to consistently become the same output, either across an entire database or even across multiple databases of different types. And in this scenario, I can't have 20 Melissas mapping out to 20 different first names. So Tonic gets a little bit interesting here. We have a toggle on most of our generators that is named consistency. And with consistency, that same input consistently becomes that same output across that entire database, or even across multiple databases of different types. And now we can see here that both Melissas have become Rosellas. Now, we also recognize that first names, we probably don't want to do this. We might be violating some security or compliance requirements. However, this is a great use case for unique identifiers. Things such as email addresses, social security numbers, bank routing, bank account numbers, all great use cases for that.
Yeah. So one question here, Ryan. So when we get a dump from the production database, where the data is stored in Tonic's context. So Tonic creates another database and stores that data.
Yeah, it's a great question. So Tonic, you're actually going to have a destination database on your own side. So you're going to connect Tonic to that original source database. Usually it's like a copy of a production database. And then it's going to transform that data in flight from that source into a destination database that's also sitting inside of your own environment. So we suggest that you spin up your own database instance as that destination server.
Got it. And we can store the transformed data in that Tonic database, right?
Sorry, you're asking.
From the source data, we are getting the the real data, and when we are pushing it to Tonic's destination database, so we are transforming that, we are masking the data, we are kind of hiding the sensitive information or transforming it and then storing it, right?
Yeah, so everything is going to actually take place entirely inside of your own environment. So wherever that destination database is located inside of your own environment, that's where we actually drop off. That's where Tonic's actually going to drop off that data.
Okay, got it. Yep, thank you.
Absolutely. So moving on here, running into our table view. And our table view is where we're going to get a more granular look at the types of transformations taking place within our data set. And Tonic does have a lot of ways right out of the box in which we can it transforms your data. I gave a couple examples earlier in the demo. I'll give a couple more examples here. So we already did first name. I'll jump into last name here, and I'll apply a last name generator with consistency on. Now with gender, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'll use what's called a categorical generator, and that's going to randomize the inputs of the column while keeping the ratio of the column the same. So in this example, let's say this is 100 rows and there's 45 male, 45 female, 10 nulls. It's going to keep that 45, 45, 10 rule intact. With email, I used an email generator earlier. I can also use what's called a character scramble as another example, and this will swap out characters at random, also keeping the entire format of the email the same. Now, what's nice about Tonic is, just because we do have a lot out of the box in which our customers can use, that doesn't mean we have full coverage of everything. Every customer we've ever worked with has some unique aspect of their data that needs to be de-identified in a very specific way. So As part of our onboarding, general support, we actually create generators for our customers, which we're happy to do. We can make sure they perform correctly, and we can make sure that they stay within our customers' security and compliance requirements. That being said, everyone's data is probably more complex than just going column by column. There are inherent relationships that exist within data that need to be de-identified and still maintain those relationships. So I'll give a pretty quick example here about how Tonic can handle that. Now, what we're looking at here is sample retail store data. And the relationship that I know exists and I need to de-identify for is that people who make more money, they spend more money at our stores, right? And I also know that members will typically spend more than non-members. So as I'm de-identifying this data, that's a relationship that I need to maintain. And the first thing I'll do then is apply a continuous generator to annual income. And what this does is it changes the values within set variance while also keeping the column nominally the same. And then I'm going to apply the same generator to largest bill amounts. And because I applied the same generator, I can now link the two together. And now they've become functions of each other. Now with store membership, I can't use a continuous generator, so I'll use that categorical generator that I used on gender earlier. And then I can partition it to largest bill amount. So now it's also tied into this relationship. And now you can see as we're de-identifying this data, it's starting to look real, it's starting to feel real, it's starting to act real. It'll work the same within your automation workflows, and it's becoming realistic data. Now, Tonic's also adept at handling semi-structured data like JSON and XML. And I'll give a quick example here about how Tonic does that. So I'm going to turn preview off here briefly so we can see our original data. And our original customer on top is Alexandra Sanford. Now, if I turn preview back on, that customer becomes Leonidas Spadoni. However, if I go all the way to the right to my JSON column, I see that Alexandra is still peeking through. And to remedy that, I'm going to apply my JSON mask generator. And then I'll apply a path expression for first name. And then apply my first name generator with consistency on. And now we can see that Alexandra has become Leonida here.
Yep, awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now Tonic is also adept at, not just masking data, we can also create data from scratch that looks and feels like the actual original production data. And so in order to create those, that raw data based off this model we've generated here on the left, plus the generators relationships we've applied down here, I'll turn on scaled mode. Now in this mode, not everything comes through. Consistency doesn't, for instance, because you don't really need consistency when creating data from scratch. Great way to create maybe 10, 100, 1,000, million, billion records on demand that actually look, feel, and act like the original production data. Great use case here for load or performance testing. What's nice here is we'll even preserve the referential integrity of the source data set. So we'll use the foreign keys in the data set if they're in there. But if they're not, no problem. You can just tell Tonic what they are. And you can do that by either importing a simple JSON file, or you can go to our foreign key tool and tell Tonic what those are.
Beautiful.
Now, something that might be even more popular than creating records from scratch is actually going in the opposite direction. And because of that, Tonic has a built-in subsetter. Subsetting lets you take a representative sample of your data in a way that preserves the referential integrity of your database using either a target where or a percentage clause. Again, we'll traverse your foreign keys and pull back just the right amount of data from the other tables to create that referentially intact data set of just the right size. In this example, we're looking at 10% of our sales data from our stores in Boston. Now, this has been actually really useful while everyone's been working from home in the past couple of years. A number of our customers will actually use this tool to give their employees that fully anonymized, referentially intact data set that fits nicely on a home laptop. We kind of look at it like a local dev environment that's safe to use. Now, the last couple of things to note here about Tonic. Everything I've shown today is accessible via an API, and most of our customers aren't coming to the UI much beyond that initial setup where they have everything looking and running the way they want it to. A lot of our customers will actually connect to their CI/CD pipeline, and they'll do nightly or weekly refresh. They always have that on-demand data set whenever they need it. And then since you are automating so much with Tonic, we'll actually alert you to any changes that take place within your schema. So maybe a table name of vendors has changed, or maybe a sensitive column gets added. So With Tonic, we'll alert you to those changes. And if they're small enough, you can go back to that privacy hub from the initial screen and fix it there. And that's the high level overview of Tonic. And hopefully you saw a lot of ways in which we can help you transform your data.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was a great demo, Ryan. Thank you so much. So one last question is, can we kind of, use a spreadsheet to create few rows of data and use that as the source data to, create hundreds or thousands of records?
Yeah, that's a good question. Adam, are you?
Yeah, I'm here. So I think the question was, given an Excel sheet or a CSV file with data, could we ingest that into Tonic and then to de-identify it, or to create more rows? What was the question?
To create more rows, maybe similar data, clone type of data.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we typically advise our customers to do that is that there's an intermediate step you have to take, because Tonic doesn't directly interface with CSV files. You would typically load the CSV file or the Excel file into a database. It's fairly trivial to do with any modern database, like Postgres is a really good example. You can typically do it in like your SQL IDE just in a few clicks. And then from there, you can connect Tonic to that Postgres database and then use our scale or synthesize mode to change the number of rows, then apply any of Tonic's transformations as well.
Simple. All right. So last question is around licensing. Adam, if you can help us, if someone wants to kind of, try your platform to create some test data, is there any trial licenses? That is question one. And question two is, what type of different licenses you guys offer to your customers?
With Tonic, I'll tackle the first question first. So we do have a sandbox environment that's on our website. Anyone can use it. It's 2 weeks. It's on Postgres or MySQL. It's it's data that we give you. So you would see like in the demo example, I think it's sample retail store data. So you can see what types of transformations you can provide that you can do using Tonic. You can see the types of scaling up that you can do. As far as licensing is concerned, we try to keep it as simple as possible because we know that the nature of data changes so much. Companies grow quickly. We don't want to hamstring them and not let them use Tonic. So we don't care how often people run Tonic. We don't care how often or how many people get actual access to the output data. The golden metric we use is how much source data you have with Tonic. And so we just want to have a rough idea of how many databases are in scope and how big the size on disk is.
Thank you, Ryan. And you have a point of contact mentioned in your website if somebody wants to go and start using your stage instance of Tonic?
Yes, it should be on our website at Tonic.ai. Try to find the actual link itself. I think the best mode of getting in contact with us would be just hit the book a demo button, and then we can show a demo, understand your use cases, and we can also provide that sandbox link from there.
That's right. Directly from the website, there's a book a demo and a request a sandbox option. It's front and center on the website, above the fold. So I think our listeners here today will find it without a problem. And we look forward to chatting with all of them.
Awesome. Thank you. Ryan, Adam, thank you so much. It was a great discussion. I don't have any additional questions, but I think it is pretty straightforward. Our followers might have seen it, how we can generate hundreds, thousands of test data from a data source and use that for testing purpose. That's a great showcase, Adam and Ryan. Thank you so much for coming in, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you for having us.